Agent Scout here, and today we are investigating one of the most fascinating business stories hiding in plain sight. A story about a sandwich shop that somehow became bigger than McDonald's. A story about a brand that went from being everyone's favorite healthy lunch option to the punchline of food controversies nobody saw coming. And a story about whether a company that fell this hard can actually find its way back. We are talking about Subway. Here is what most people genuinely do not know. Subway is the largest restaurant chain in the world by number of locations. Not McDonald's, not Starbucks, not KFC. Subway. At their peak, they had over 44,000 locations across more than 100 countries. But here's the thing, Agent Scout always comes back to. Being the biggest and being the best are two completely different things, and Subway has spent the last decade learning that lesson the hard way. So let us put on the detective hat and dig in. Our investigation starts in 1965 at a backyard barbecue in Bridgeport, Connecticut. A 17-year-old kid named Fred DeLuca is stressed. He needs money for college and has no idea where it is coming from. Also at that barbecue is a family friend named Peter Buck, a nuclear physicist. Smart guy. When DeLuca tells him his problem, Buck offers something unexpected. A $1,000 loan to open a sandwich shop. One condition. Buck gets 50% of whatever they build. DeLuca shook his hand and agreed on the spot. They opened their first location that same year, calling it Pete's Super Submarines. That name did not last. 2 years later, they renamed it Subway and started thinking bigger. DeLuca had a specific goal locked in his head. 32 locations by 1975. They missed it, but instead of accepting that, DeLuca reset the target and kept pushing with the same obsessive energy. That refusal to slow down defined Subway for the next several decades. All of it starting from one backyard handshake and a $1,000 bet. By 1974, Subway had 16 locations. Small, but franchising had begun, and the model was starting to show what it could really do. By 1978, they crossed 100 locations. By 1987, they had crossed 5,000. 5,000 sandwich shops in roughly 2 decades from a single storefront in Connecticut. That is not an accident. That is a system working exactly the way it was designed. So, what made it click? A few things. First, the startup costs for a Subway franchise were significantly lower than almost any other fast food option available. Small footprint, simple equipment, no massive kitchen required. That flexibility meant Subway could go places other chains never considered. Airports, hospitals, gas stations, Walmart locations, military bases. Subway showed up everywhere. And because the barrier to entry was low, a huge pool of ordinary people could afford to become franchisees. More franchisees meant more locations. More locations meant more visibility. More visibility brought in more franchisees. The flywheel kept spinning. Second, the menu had a clear identity that felt different from the competition. Fresh sandwiches made right in front of you with ingredients you could actually see. No mystery, no hidden process. In a fast food landscape that was getting increasingly greasy and processed, that transparency felt genuinely refreshing. Subway felt honest, and that positioning was smart long before healthy eating became a mainstream concern. By 2002, Subway officially surpassed McDonald's to become the largest fast food chain in the world by number of locations. McDonald's, the most iconic fast food brand in human history. Subway passed them. A $1,000 backyard loan eventually produced the largest restaurant chain on the planet. For a long time, it genuinely seemed like nothing could slow this thing down. But Agent Scout always looks beneath the surface. And underneath Subway's impressive exterior, something was quietly breaking down. Here is the structural problem. Subway made most of its money from franchise fees collected every time a new location opened, and from selling ingredients to franchisees through its own supply chain. Not from individual restaurants performing well, not from same-store sales growing sustainably. The financial engine ran on new locations opening. More openings meant more fees. More openings meant more ingredient sales. Whether any individual franchisee was actually profitable was almost secondary. That created a damaging incentive. Subway kept opening new locations in markets that were already saturated. Franchisees watched new Subway stores open blocks away from their own, cutting directly into their customer base. Individual revenues dropped. Legal disputes followed. The relationship between Subway corporate and its own franchise owners became one of the most contentious dynamics in the entire fast food industry. It never got properly resolved. Then came the spokesperson situation. For years, Subway's identity rested entirely on one idea: eat fresh. In the late 1990s, a man named Jared Fogle became their spokesperson after losing a significant amount of weight eating Subway every day. The campaign ran for 15 years. It drove enormous business and made Subway synonymous with healthy eating. But Subway had staked its entire brand identity on one human being and one story. That is a fragile foundation for a global company. In 2015, Jared Fogle pleaded guilty to serious federal charges. The reputational damage was immediate and severe. The brand that had spent 15 years pointing at one man as proof of its core message suddenly had nowhere to point. You cannot build a company's soul around a single person and expect that to hold forever. Subway paid an extremely steep price for finding that out the way they did. By the mid-2000s, the competitive landscape around Subway had shifted dramatically. Chipotle was exploding. Panera was growing. Fast casual chains were offering fresher ingredients and a noticeably better experience. These competitors were innovating constantly and listening to what customers actually wanted. Meanwhile, Subway's menu stayed mostly unchanged. Store designs aged. The energy that had once made the brand feel different quietly faded into something routine and forgettable. Then the controversies arrived. A legal case in Ireland ruled that Subway's bread contained so much sugar it could not legally be classified as bread under Irish tax law. The story went international. Then a study claimed Subway's tuna contained no detectable tuna DNA. Subway disputed it, but the story had already spread millions of times before their response reached anyone. The correction never travels as far as the original claim. When customers start questioning what is actually inside your food, that doubt follows the brand everywhere, and it is extraordinarily hard to shake. Between 2015 and 2021, Subway closed more than 6,000 locations in the United States alone. The chain built entirely around being everywhere was now visibly shrinking. Everything hit simultaneously. The Jared fallout, the ingredient controversies, the franchisee anger, the quality perception slipping further. Nothing was moving in the right direction. Then Fred DeLuca passed away in September 2015 following a battle with leukemia. He was 67. DeLuca had been the driving force behind Subway for 50 years. His obsession with growth was not just his personality, it was the entire culture of the organization. Without him, the company drifted. Leadership changed multiple times. Direction became unclear. For a brand always defined by relentless forward momentum, standing still felt like going backwards. Because in several important ways, it genuinely was. Here is the part of the investigation that genuinely surprised Agent Scout. Because by the late 2000s, it would have been completely reasonable to write Subway off entirely. The evidence pointing toward terminal decline was substantial. And yet, something started to shift. In 2021, Subway hired a new CEO named John Chidsey. Chidsey had previously run Burger King through its own turnaround. He was not a company insider. He was a fixer brought in with a clear mandate. Diagnose what is broken. Fix it. And he came with a serious structured plan. The centerpiece was the Subway series, the biggest menu overhaul in the company's history. The old system let customers customize sandwiches with virtually any ingredient combination imaginable. In theory, that sounds great. In practice, it created massive inconsistency between locations and genuinely overwhelmed customers who just wanted someone to tell them what was good. The Subway series replaced the chaos with a curated lineup of named signature sandwiches, each one carefully developed and tested. The logic was simple and sound. Sometimes too many choices is the actual problem. A well-designed recommended menu makes the experience better for the customer and more consistent for the franchisee. Less confusion. Better sandwich every time. They also invested in genuinely better ingredients. Freshly sliced meat replaced pre-packaged product. New bread options were introduced. Sauces improved. Store designs were updated. And for the first time in years, the focus shifted toward franchisee profitability rather than raw location count. That was a fundamental change in how Subway thought about its own business. Then in 2023, Subway was acquired by Rourke Capital in a deal reportedly valued at around $9 billion. $9 billion for a company that started with a $1,000 backyard loan. Whatever you think about where Subway has been, that number tells you something important about how much value still exists inside this brand. So where does all of this leave us? Same-store sales are improving, location closures have slowed considerably, franchisee sentiment is reportedly better than it has been in years. The Subway series has been broadly well received. Ingredient quality is genuinely better at most locations than it was 5 years ago. These are real signals. They are not nothing. But Agent Scout is going to be honest. This is not a completed comeback. Not yet. It is a comeback attempt still in progress with a lot left to prove. The brand took serious damage across multiple fronts in a short period of time. That kind of accumulated damage does not disappear in 2 or 3 years no matter how good the new menu tastes. But the foundation is still substantial. The global distribution is enormous. The brand is recognized in virtually every country on Earth. And the original idea at the center of everything, a fresh made-to-order sandwich at a price almost anyone can afford, is still a genuinely good idea. It always was. There is something worth respecting about this company's full arc. It started with a stressed-out teenager, a kind family friend, $1,000, and a backyard handshake neither of them fully understood the significance of. And it became the largest restaurant chain on the planet. The fall was real. Some of it was avoidable, but the attempt to get back up is also real. And that chapter is still being written. Agent Scout's verdict. Subway is not finished. Not even close. But the next few years will tell us everything about whether this turnaround actually has staying power. Let me know in the comments what you think about Subway. Do you still eat there, or has a competitor permanently taken that spot? Do you think this turnaround is real or too little too late? Any thoughts about the company, the sandwich, or anything in this investigation? Drop them below. Agent Scout wants to hear exactly what you have to say.